Hi, so let's have a look at how to make different types of assignments in your Google Classroom. And specifically in this video, we'll be looking at creating basic multiple choice assignments. Before we move into the details of creating multiple choice assignments, let's actually have a look at sort of the broader picture of creating assignments in Google Classroom so you know where we're going. And for each type of assignment, we'll have a separate video on how to create the assignment and how to grade that type of assignment. So again, in this video, we'll be looking at multiple choice assignments, but with Google Classroom, assignments are very, very customizable. They're all different types. You can also have students turn in papers and essays. We'll talk a lot about that. Google Classroom is very powerful for giving feedback on these types of assignments. Or you can do worksheets and short answer questions like you might hand out in class or do as a homework assignment. So let's move back to multiple choice and focus in. And we'll try making a multiple choice assignment in our test Google Classroom. So here I am. I'm on the classwork page of my Google Classroom. Navigate to this by hitting this tab at the top. I'm going to make a multiple choice exam for my students. So to do this, go to the Create button, and I'm going to choose Quiz Assignment. For all of my graded assignments, I opt to create them through the Quiz Assignment function. I'm going to click on this, and you can see Google Classroom pulls up a blank quiz template. So let's call this multiple choice exam. We'll make it about neurons. And I usually set up these things before I actually make the exam itself. So what I'm going to look at is the number of points I want it to be worth. Let's say I want it to be worth 50 points in total. That looks good. I want it to be due. Let's have it due next week on the 21st. I'm going to give it the time. My class starts at 9 a.m. So I'm going to say it's due at 9 a.m. They have to do it between this week and the start of class next week. I want it for next week, but I haven't created the topic for next week yet, this section of my Google Classroom. And again, if you're unfamiliar with the concept of topics in the Google Classroom, check out our earlier videos on creating your Google Classroom. Here I'm going to put it in week 2 so that it can be done for week 3. Since this is a multiple choice assignment, you can see that Google Classroom has already produced a blank quiz. This is what I'll make my actual assignment out of. I just want to touch briefly on this option. You can see I've turned grade importing on, and that is the default function. That means because this is multiple choice, I can input not only my questions for the multiple choice, but my answers. And Google Classroom will automatically grade my quizzes and give my students useful feedback about the questions. So that's everything for setup on a multiple choice assignment. I'm going to click on this blank quiz here, and let's actually make our assignment. So when I click that, a Google form comes up, and you may have seen Google Forms in other contexts. This is very similar, only it's a graded Google form. So let's start by giving it a title. There it is. And next, we'll go up to this gear. This is the settings for your form. I always do this early on so that I remember to do it. Hit settings, and you'll see you have some options. We're in the general settings tab right now. I collect email address from people who submit the assignments. When students submit these types of assignments for your Google Classroom, it's automatically associated with their name. I check this because it allows me to have the Google form send my students response receipts. So they get an email that has all of the responses they submitted. And so that way they know that their response went through. And if they're worried about whether or not I've gotten it, they can just check their email and see that their response was in fact recorded. Can be kind of comforting for students. So I'm going to check response receipts, and I'm going to check always. I check always instead of at request because not all students know what this option means, and so some will say they don't want a response receipt because they don't know what that is, not because they wouldn't actually like the confirmation that their response was recorded. Requires sign-in. This is restricted to users in our institutional account, which all of our students are. I'm going to limit to one response. because I only want my students to submit their exam once. These options, edit after submit, and see summary charts and text responses, I leave both of these unchecked. I want my students to submit their exam when they're sure about the answers and not be able to edit it after submission. I also don't want them to necessarily be able to see summary charts of, for instance, on average, how many people got this question right. That's not pertinent information for my students. I only want them to see their own responses. Let's head up here to presentation. This determines what students see during the exam. I like to use the show progress bar. So for instance, if I have a 10-question exam, there's a little progress bar that will fill up and show them, you're 2 out of 10, which can feel good to students to know how close they are to the end, since they're used to taking exams on paper where they can see how many pages they have left. This is another option. We're not going to use this on this exam, but you can shuffle the question order. So if you were having people take the exam in the same room, for instance, you might want to do this so that different people get the exam with questions in different orders. Makes it harder for people to cheat on the exam. Let's go up to the Quizzes tab. This, you can tell, because I made this through Google Classroom, this is already set as a quiz. And what that means is the questions have point value associated with them instead of this just being a normal form that people fill out. I can choose to release the grade immediately after each submission. I'm going to do that so that my students can see how they did on it right away. And I can choose whether I want my students to see questions they missed, correct answers, and point values. I like my students to see all of these so that they can learn from their own work. Once you've done your settings, make sure to hit Save at the bottom to save your updated settings. So, how do we actually add questions to this? You can see that there's one question that automatically appears. Going to click it. I can type in my question. And then I have some options that I can type in just by hovering over this. I can actually type this option in. Let's say the first answer is this one. The second answer is no, this one. And the last answer is none of the above. I've typed in my choices. Now I'm going to go down to Answer Key. And I can actually pick, remember this is a 50-point exam, so let's make this worth, let's say this is worth 10 points. And I can pick the correct answer. Let's say this one is the correct answer. And additionally, if I click Add Answer Feedback, for incorrect answers, the exam will tell them nope, and for correct answers, it will tell them great. That question is done. So, what if I want to get a bit fancier with my questions? Let's hit Done on this one first. Solidify what I've chosen. Ooh, actually, one thing I've forgotten. This is very important. This required slider means that someone cannot submit the exam unless they have answered this question. I turn this on for all of my questions. I don't want students leaving questions blank. On a multiple choice exam, in the worst case scenario, I would want them to at least guess the answer for the question. So I hit required on all of my questions. So let's try some fancier question types. Let's say I want them to watch a video and answer a question about it. You'll see over here I have options. I can add another question. I can import questions from another assignment. I can add a title or description. This is if you just want, a text paragraph explaining things. I can add an image, or I can add a video. Let's add a video. Here, I'm going to add a video of the action potential. Let's find one I like. I like this one. And notice you could have also input the URL. So what you would normally type into your web browser to find the video, if you already know where it's located, you can input it by URL, or you can just search YouTube, which is what I'm doing for a video that matches with what you need. I'm going to hit select, and you can see that video is now part of my exam. I want to ask a question about the video. I want students to watch it, and then I'll ask a question about it. And so I'm going to go to Add Question. And here we are, making a new question. So here, let's say what is the final step in the action potential? I want to add a little explainer that if they need to, if they don't know this question right off the bat, they can watch the video above. To do that, I'm going to hit this kebab. The kebab is the name for this 3-dot symbol. There's a little weird trivia for you. I'm going to hit this kebab and add a description, which allows me to add another section of text to my question. Watch the video above to answer this question. And then here, again, I'll type in my options. If I typed in these options, but I wanted them in a certain order, I can grab this and drag them to reorder the answers. And let's again go through, hit answer key. Let's make this one worth 20 points. Going to choose the correct answer. And I'm going to add answer feedback. So you don't have to add feedback on both answers. For instance, I can just add feedback if they get the correct answer. Let's add one more question. So we're done with that. Remember, this is a required question. Let's add one more. And we're going to do this one, say, let's have them answer questions about an image. I'm going to go down here to add image. This image is on my computer, so I would use the upload function if it's on my desktop, for instance, or in my hard drive. If the image is in my Google Drive, which is where I store most everything, my personal institutional Google Drive, I would click this instead. Here, going to upload it from my computer. Click Upload, click Browse, and it will bring up a browser window. I want this image, which is on my desktop. If I click Open, it uploads that image for addition to my exam. Give it a name. And I want to ask questions about this image. So let's add a question. Let's say, there's my question. You'll notice that Google has decided this should probably be a short answer question. It will take its best guess between all of these different question types. But you can change it to whatever you want. Here I'm going to make it a multiple choice question. Again, this is required. Going to the answer key. This is a 20-point question. It's smiling. And let's add some feedback. Okay, so for correct answer, great. For incorrect answer, I actually want them to be able to learn why their answer was incorrect and what the correct answer is by looking at a web page. So I can either type in feedback, or I can attach a link to a web page, or I can attach a YouTube video where if they get this question wrong, then Google Classroom will actually provide them with this video or this link. So let's do a link. I want it to link to this page, so I'm going to select the URL and Command-C to copy it. And I'm going to paste that, Command-V, into this link box. Hit Add to say that it's the one I want, looks okay, and save. And you can see now that the feedback for correct answers is great. The feedback for incorrect answers is a link to a website explaining the answers to this question. and I'll hit done. So we've made our quiz, and now I'm back in our Google Classroom. I've actually refreshed this page, so now the name of my exam shows up, but don't worry if it still says blank quiz. It's got the one you made in there. And all I have to do is assign it, or if I hit the caret next to assign, I can schedule it for a time when I want students to be able to see it. I don't want them to see it until after class tomorrow. So there's the class date. My class ends at noon. So let's say it will appear for students at that point. When I hit schedule, you can see that it appears in the week, scheduled for tomorrow at the right time. That's the time that it will appear for students. You can see the due date. So once this appears, it will also appear on student Google calendars so they know it's been assigned to them and when it's due.